There are some disappearances that begin with panic, noise, chaos, a moment where something clearly goes wrong. This wasn't one of them. The disappearance of Marion Barter didn't start with fear. It started with something much harder to recognize: hope. Marion is 51 years old, a school teacher, structured, reliable, predictable, the kind of life most people would describe as stable. Nothing about her suggests risk. Nothing suggests she's about to vanish. And that's what makes what happens next so difficult to understand. Because instead of something being taken from her, she begins letting things go. It doesn't happen all at once. That's important. People don't usually destroy their lives in a single moment. They do it in steps, small ones, quiet ones. First, she resigns from her job. Not abruptly, not dramatically, just ends it. Then, she sells her house. Quickly, below what it's worth. That detail matters, because when people rush financial decisions like that, it usually means one thing: they're not planning to stay. And then she starts pulling away from routine, from normal communication, from the version of her life everyone else understands. At this point, if you were watching from the outside, you might not think something is wrong. You might think she's starting over. And in a way, she was. Then comes the moment that changes everything. She changes her name, legally. Not a nickname, not something informal, a complete identity shift. She becomes Flora Bella Natalia Marion Remiclet. That name isn't random, it's connected. Because around this same time, there's a man who enters her life quietly. His name, at least one version of it, is Ric Blum. But that's only part of the truth, because this man doesn't operate under one identity. He has many different names, different documents, different lives, and that detail alone changes how this entire story should be understood. There's a reason cases like this confuse people. Because there's no visible coercion, no threats, no force, and yet the outcome looks exactly like control. That's because the control here isn't physical, it's psychological. People like this don't take power, they're given it through trust, through emotional connection, through carefully constructed perception. They don't say, do this. They create a world where you want to, and once that happens, everything else becomes easier. This is where people often ask the wrong question. They ask, what made her vulnerable? But vulnerability isn't always about weakness. Sometimes it's about timing. At 51, Marion was in a transitional stage. Her identity as a teacher was stable. Her role as a mother was evolving. Her future, less defined than it once was. And in that space, people become open to change, open to reinvention, open to the idea that life could be different. Now imagine someone entering that moment and offering exactly that: a new life, a new identity, a new beginning. And that doesn't feel like manipulation. It feels like possibility. We don't have every detail of how their relationship developed, but we know enough. It moved quickly, emotionally intense, future-focused. This is a known pattern in manipulative dynamics: fast attachment. Because the faster someone becomes emotionally invested, the less likely they are to question inconsistencies. And there would have been inconsistencies. Multiple identities don't exist without contradictions. But if the emotional connection is strong enough, those contradictions don't feel like warning signs. They feel like details that don't matter. The name change is more than symbolic. It represents something deeper, a merging of identities. When someone adopts the name of another person, especially in a romantic context, it creates psychological alignment, a shared future, a shared direction, a shared self. At that point, Leaving the relationship doesn't just mean losing a partner, it means losing the version of yourself you've become. And that makes walking away incredibly difficult. Here's what makes this case particularly unsettling. Marion wasn't physically isolated. No one locked her away. No one cut her off directly. Instead, she gradually disconnects on her own. Less communication, less transparency, less connection to her previous life. This is one of the most effective forms of control because it doesn't feel imposed, it feels chosen. Eventually, she leaves Australia. She travels overseas. At some point, she is with him. Witnesses later describe them as a couple. Everything appears normal, but normal in cases like this can be misleading. Because what people see externally is often the final version of a story that has already been shaped internally. Then something unexpected happens. She comes back, alone. No announcement, no explanation, and most importantly, no communication with the people who know her. That silence is critical because it suggests a shift, something changed. Either the relationship broke down or the situation evolved into something more complicated. October 1997. Marion enters a bank. She withdraws $80,000 in cash. This is one of the most important moments in the entire case because cash removes traceability. No digital trail, no destination, no accountability. And this isn't a small amount. This is everything. Years of financial stability converted into something that can disappear instantly. At this point, we have to shift perspective because this is no longer just about a relationship. This is about outcome, and the outcome aligns with a pattern. The man connected to her has a history of fraud, deception, identity manipulation. Other women reported similar experiences: fast relationships, emotional intensity, financial involvement. This is not coincidence, it's a system. After that bank withdrawal, everything stops. No contact, no sightings, no activity. She disappears completely, and not in a chaotic way, in a controlled, almost deliberate absence. What makes this case difficult isn't just what happened, it's what didn't happen. No body, no confirmed location, no verified final moment, just a gap, a space where answers should be, but aren't. So we come back to the core question. What was the motive? Based on everything available, the strongest explanation is financial, but motive alone doesn't explain disappearance, because financial exploitation doesn't always lead to this outcome, which means something else happened after that final transaction, and that's the part we can't see. Every case like this has a point where everything changes, a moment where a decision is made, a boundary is crossed, a situation becomes irreversible. We don't know when that moment happened, but we know it exists because after it, Marion is gone. Even without full answers, patterns leave traces, and the pattern here is clear: emotional connection, identity merging, financial movement, disappearance. That sequence matters because it suggests progression, not randomness. There's something about this case that lingers, and it's not just the mystery, it's the method, because nothing here feels sudden. Everything feels gradual, and that's what makes it unsettling, because it suggests that by the time the danger existed, it was already too late to recognize it. Years pass, no answers, no closure, just silence. And silence in cases like this isn't empty. It's filled with unknowns. Somewhere in this story, there is a final truth, a version of events that explains everything. But until that truth is revealed, We're left with fragments, patterns, decisions, moments, and a woman who changed her name, built a new life, and then disappeared from it completely. Marion Barter remains, not just missing, but unresolved. Sometimes, the most dangerous situations don't look dangerous at all. They look like opportunity, like love, like a second chance. And by the time you realize what they really are, there's nothing left to go back to.